In 2003, a decommissioned Boeing 737 began taxiing down the runway at Quatro de Fevereiro Airport in Luanda in Angola. The plane was not scheduled to fly anywhere, and as far as the authorities were concerned, had no pilots or crew aboard. Nevertheless, the plane continued its approach to the runway and eventually took off. It was never seen again. It was believed that one man, pilot and engineer Ben Charles Padilla, stole the plane. Where he went, or what happened next, remains a mystery. Flight 19 consisted of 5 torpedo bombers that disappeared on a training flight on December 5th, 1945, when flying over the notorious Bermuda Triangle. Despite searching thousands of square miles, no traces of the plane or the 14 crew were ever found. An investigation into the final radio transmissions sent from the planes suggested that navigational errors had eventually sent them off course, and they crashed somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic. Star Tiger was an Avro Tudor plane that went missing on a flight from Santa Maria to Bermuda in 1948. The plane was experiencing severe weather conditions during its flight, and it was assumed that it was either blown off course or suffered fatal damage. No wreckage was ever found. Star Ariel was another Avro Tudor plane that went missing almost exactly a year after the Star Tiger. This plane, however, was flying in excellent weather conditions, and radio transmissions indicated no problems with the flight. The plane never arrived at its intended destination. Investigators could not come up with a reason why. The entire fleet of Avro Tudor planes was scrapped sometime after these incidents. A flight from Vancouver to Japan went missing over Alaska in 1951. It was reported that visibility was very low at 500 meters and weather conditions were less than ideal, with heavy rain and sleet. The flight failed to arrive at its stopover point in Anchorage, and it was presumed the flight crashed due to bad weather. What's strange, though, is that no wreckage of the huge plane was ever found. In 1978, an Australian UFO enthusiast went missing whilst flying a light aircraft in a routine training flight. He contacted air traffic control to report that he was being followed by another plane. Not long after, he announced that it was not an aircraft, at which point his transmission was garbled by metallic static noises, and he was never seen again. UFO enthusiasts insist that he must have been abducted by aliens, but experts suggest that he saw his reflections in the water and sadly crashed. The DC-3 airliner was carrying 33 people when it disappeared in December 1948. The aircraft was scheduled for repair before taking off from San Juan, but the pilot was unwilling to wait the extra time that it would have taken. The last reported location of the aircraft was New Orleans, which was way off course. The aircraft was never found, but investigators believe its instruments malfunctioned, sending it the wrong direction, where it unfortunately crashed into the sea. In 1947, the Stardust took off from Buenos Aires, heading for Chile, and made its way over the Andes mountain range. Air traffic controllers lost contact with the aircraft, and it never arrived at its destination. The final message sent from the plane was a distress call via Morse code, which read "Stendek." This meaningless message has puzzled investigators and only adds to the mystery of what happened to this plane. This experienced pilot was coming into land on a solo flight at St. Croix on the US Virgin Islands when he disappeared. Now, this flight occurred on a warm, sunny day, and Piper was in constant contact with the radio tower. Air traffic controllers gave him permission to land and could see the red and green lights of his plane blinking. They watched another aircraft take off, but when they looked back, his plane was nowhere to be seen. No trace of his aircraft was ever found, despite being less than 1 mile away from the airport. Flight 404 took off from the Pakistani city of Gilbil en route to the capital, Islamabad. Radio contact was made between the aircraft and the air traffic control shortly after it took off, but this was the last time it was ever heard from. When the plane failed to reach its intended destination, the Pakistani military began searching the Himalayan mountain range, as it was feared the plane could have crashed into a mountain. But no wreckage was ever found. In 1932, a small expedition of 2 pilots and a doctor took off from New York and headed for Rome. The doctor was hoping to study the effects of long-haul air travel on the body. Unfortunately, he didn't get a chance to release his findings, as the small Skyrocket J400 never made it to Italy. The last reported sighting of the plane was in France, and after that, nobody knows what happened to it. The Hawaii Clipper was a Pan Am passenger plane, and its disappearance marked one of the worst aviation disasters of the time. It was 1938 and the Hawaii Clipper was on its way to Manila from San Francisco when it reported turbulence and dense cloud. The plane was designed to take off and land in water, which is why the complete disappearance of the plane and its 19 passengers remains such a mystery. Glenn Miller was an entertainer, a big band leader, and a very famous man in the 1940s. He was on his way to France in 1944 to perform for troops fighting in World War II when his small plane took off from an airport in South England and disappeared into heavy fog. The aircraft was never seen again, and it's been speculated that it was shot down by Germans over the English Channel, but nobody really knows for sure. The disappearance of Amelia Earhart and her plane is certainly one of the most well-known incidents of this type. She was an intrepid explorer and the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. While she was attempting to circumnavigate the globe, though, is the point at which she went missing. Her last reported location was somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Investigators have been arguing for decades over what happened to her, and to be honest, we'll probably never really know. MH370 is the flight number of a Malaysian airplane that disappeared over the South China Sea in just March of 2004, something fresh in everyone's minds and something that still remains very sad. It's the most recent incident involving the disappearance of a large aircraft, and indeed the most popular incident of its kind in history. The flight was on its way to Beijing from Kuala Lumpur when it disappeared from air traffic radar screens. The Malaysian military tracked it again as it veered way off course until it once again disappeared. Now, despite a multinational effort to locate the plane, the world is no closer to knowing what happened to it and the 239 people on board, even in this day and age of technology and cooperation. Conspiracy theories suggest maybe a hijacking, crew suicide, or the phantom cell phone hypothesis, which is a theory that passengers are still alive but cannot answer their cell phones for some reason, which is something which didn't work for a very long amount of time. And finally, some people suggest that maybe it was caused by a cyber attack. Some people do think, though, that it could have been a black hole, or maybe that the plane was abducted by aliens. Either way, it remains a very tragic case.